There is something strange about the way people wait. We hold out for the perfect season to begin a project. We wait for a surge of confidence before taking a risk, or for a stroke of luck to finally arrive. And while we wait for conditions to be perfectly aligned, time quietly slips away. The natural world does not operate on permission. Rivers do not pause to gather belief. The wind does not ask if the trees are ready. Even the smallest seed does not spend life dreaming of a forest. It simply breaks itself open against heavy dirt and gets to work. So many human ambitions quietly fade away. The issue is rarely that those goals were impossible. People simply expect the flower to bloom without doing the dark, unglamorous work of growing roots. In a quiet, forgotten valley called Ash Hollow, a young man named Rowan lived inside this exact trap. He wanted to build things. He wanted his name to matter. Yet every plan ended with a single word: tomorrow. Tomorrow he would clean his father's abandoned workshop. Tomorrow he would learn the trade. Rowan suffered from a specific illusion. He genuinely believed that something outside of himself had to magically shift before he could begin. The days gathered into seasons. The tools gathered dust, and the perfect moment never arrived. One afternoon, wandering aimlessly, Rowan found a village elder named Mira by the river. She was polishing an ancient, perfectly round stone wheel. No jewels, no markings, just a heavy, smooth circle resting in her weathered hands. When Rowan laughed and called the object useless, Mira only smiled. She suggested that while he was searching for what the tool could do, the stone was more interested in what it asked. It was a riddle he couldn't solve by thinking, only by keeping it near. Mira left the wheel for Rowan without another word. He brought it to the dusty workshop, half expecting some sudden spark of inspiration to strike him. Nothing happened. The wheel simply sat there, yet its quiet, unblinking presence made the surrounding mess impossible to ignore. For the first time in years, he picked up a broom.
Then a traveling merchant arrived in Ash Hollow, bringing wagons full of master-crafted furniture from distant cities. The villagers gathered to admire the smooth curves and flawless patterns. Rowan stood at the edge of the crowd. Next to the merchant's flawless symmetrical bowl, his own rough, slightly lopsided attempts with visible tool marks suddenly looked childish.
The old tomorrow returned with a vengeance. Seeing those finished masterpieces made Rowan's workshop feel like a graveyard of mistakes. He covered his bench with a cloth and walked away, convinced that the gap between his current hands and that level of skill was a canyon he'd never cross. After 3 days of a closed workshop, Mira found him. Rowan pointed to his flaws, claiming the merchant's goods were superior. Mira corrected him. The merchant's bowls were finished. They had reached the absolute limit of their potential. Rowan's uneven bowl, she explained, carried the physical proof of a person actively learning. Every slip of the knife and tiny imperfection was a permanent record of active growth. Comparison is a trap that leads nowhere but paralysis. True value does not lie in immediate perfection. It lies in the continuous, active process of getting better. Winter arrived without warning. A brutal storm swept through the mountains, and the heavy, freezing river tore through Ash Hollow's only crossing, smashing the wooden supports and cutting off the village's supply of food and medicine. The villagers gathered at the riverbank and immediately defaulted to their oldest habit. They argued. They claimed the water was too dangerous. They decided they had to wait for spring. Rowan listened to the excuses, recognizing the exact sound of fear hiding behind the mask of caution. He refused to wait. He picked up his tools, waded into the freezing water, and began measuring beams alone. The work was brutal and lonely. Beams slipped and vanished, but the sound of Rowan's hammer striking wood eventually became too loud to ignore. One by one, the villagers stopped arguing and started moving. The blacksmith reached for iron pins. The farmers grabbed the ropes. The hesitation simply evaporated under the weight of someone finally doing the work. They did not have ideal conditions. They had no guarantee the structure would hold. But collective survival and progress happen precisely when people choose to act inside the chaos, rather than waiting for safety to arrive. The rebuilt bridge was rough and ordinary, but it held the weight of the supply wagons. That evening, Rowan walked alone to the river. He found Mira sitting on the stones, and finally told her he understood the object in his pocket. The stone wheel possessed absolutely zero inherent power. It contained no magic, and it never built a single thing on its own. A heavy object stays perfectly static until a continuous, deliberate force pushes against it. Life operates the same way. The circle only moves when a person decides to push it. You do not build lasting character, skill, or purpose through grand declarations. You build them through unglamorous, daily repetition. Reading one page, making one bad carving, sweeping one dusty floor. There is a bridge in your own life that you have been delaying. You do not need perfect timing. You do not need to feel ready. You only need to take the first unsteady step.